Nurah Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nurah Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nurah Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 145 of the Nurah Speaks podcast, and I am your host, Nurah Muhammad. It is always a privilege, and it's a pleasure to be with you again, back for another episode. We are already at episode 145, and I'm very excited for this opportunity to share some insights with you, and I'm just very grateful to have this platform to share information and have conversations that are not had in the mainstream, to spark thought, to give insight, to be a blessing in general. I want to be someone, and I want this podcast to be something that contributes to the conversation, that contributes to improving outcomes in our community, and not a source of depletion, degradation, or damage that we often unfortunately get in the media that is geared towards our people. Nurah Speaks podcast is a program to tug on the soul and consciousness of the Black community, because I think that it is time for us to wake up and act like living people do, producing for ourselves, recognizing what our needs are, and coming together collectively to meet the needs of our people. And that's what people do who are alive. However, in our case, we have been so spiritually asleep. We have been so unconscious in such a long time. It is evident in how we neglect or fail to address our needs, but instead look to others to meet our needs, and we place demands on others that we do not place on ourselves. So the Nurah Speaks podcast is intended to help refocus the conversation, help us understand that our priorities are our needs. Our priorities are not asking others to meet our needs. And also to help us recognize that we do have the capacity to meet our needs. We do have the qualified men and women to manage our own affairs. What's lacking is the love. What's lacking is the determination. What's lacking is the belief in self. And I believe that once we understand the time, once we understand what our responsibilities are, once we understand our position in this world, then we would have the desire to do more for self. But until then, we will unfortunately remain in a position with our hand out, looking for someone to put something in, instead of a handshake like other nations do, meeting each other eye to eye. And I believe our time will come. In fact, I believe our time is now. And so that is why this podcast is so important, and the messages that come across this program, because our time is now, and somebody has to say it. And so in the absence and in the void that I see across media, I am determined to be someone and to have a program that contributes to the conversation in a meaningful way. And so I'm excited to have this show. I'm excited to have this program, and I thank God for this opportunity to come before you each week. And you really can never run out of things to discuss on a podcast that has an intention to awaken our people. There's really so much to discuss, and so we're never going to run out of things to say. What's important, however, is how we craft our messages and how we deliver what it is that we want to bring to our people, because it is not just the message, but it's also the delivery of the message that helps our people loosen up the rusty locks that are on our minds. So, we have to lead with love. And I'm a big proponent of that, leading with love in whatever capacity of leadership you're operating in, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a service provider. We must lead with love. And if we don't have love at the root of our interactions, then we're going to substitute the abuses that happened, that are rendered unto us by those who have misused us for the past 400 years. We will just replace them with ourselves, and we don't want to replace them with ourselves if we're going to spitefully misuse each other and take advantage of each other, because we don't have love at the root and because we don't have love at the base. And so I always encourage anyone who is interacting with our people, especially our children, our most vulnerable, lead with love. And if you don't have the capacity to lead with love, then maybe you should sit down and let someone else take that role. Because if we're not going to lead with love, if we're not going to have love at the base of our interactions, then we're going to do damage to each other. And we can't afford at this time to do more damage to one another. So again, welcome to episode 145. It is exciting for me to bring you this episode as we are nearing the year 2021. And as I am looking ahead to the new year, to 2021, I am preparing physically, mentally for a new year. And I'm not sure if I shared this previously on the podcast, but every December, it is a month in which I spend time in reflection. I spend time in my spirituality. It is a time spent abstaining from commercialization, frivolity, and frivolous entertainment. It is a time of deep, deep reflection and refraining from the general excesses that we see that occur in the month of December. And I know that the December of 2020 is not like any other December where we are able to engage in excesses, publicly because of the pandemic and because of the way we are changing how we do things socially. But generally, this time of the year is when there's a lot of extravagance. There's a lot of excesses that's occurring. And so every December, it is a time where I abstain from all of that. And not only abstain from entertainment and excess, but also from sunrise to sunset. I do not consume food or drink. And, it provides me an opportunity to purify myself, to purify my heart, as I said, to reflect and prepare for the new year, so that when the new year comes, January 1st and 2nd aren't days spent recuperating from overindulgence on New Year's Eve. It is a time when I can begin a new year hitting the ground running because I have prepared myself physically and mentally to tackle the new challenges that come with the new year. And so it's not, as I said, it's not just good for the body, but it's also good for the mind. And I'm not sure, what your practice is, and maybe you are someone who likes to indulge in this time, but I would encourage you to take a couple days, take a week as we are preparing to enter into a new year, and just pull back and maybe 2020 and the pandemic will help you to pull back, because we're encouraged to physical distance and we're encouraged to only gather with those within our household. Take the time and reflect. Take the time to slow down. Take the time to push back from entertainment, push back from the table, and prepare yourself, prepare your body. And we shouldn't we do damage to ourselves during this time of the year. And that's why when January comes, there's so many commercials for gyms, for fitness, for diets, because we have, gained weight. We have indulged in alcohol and other activities during the holiday season, but take some time in the next week and think about what you want for your new year and what you must do in preparation for a new year. So as I'm looking ahead to the year 2021 and specifically thinking about the goals that I'm setting for the podcast, I have not had that many guests in the year 2020. And I'm very selective, and I've said this before, I'm very selective with those that I bring on the program. But not only that, I'm also cautious and mindful of when to air specific shows. And I think about timing. I think about, conversations. And, with 2020 being an election year, there are some conversations that I put off. There are some conversations that I have held up because I want to always deliver not just a good message, but a timely message. But as I'm looking ahead to 2021, I want to bring a minimum of 13 guests to you in the new year. And I already know who those guests are. And I'm very excited to have them come before you. I do not bring anybody to the podcast who I think won't be a good guest. I don't invite anyone to pour into the Nurah Speaks audience who I don't feel will bring value. As I say nearly each time I begin the show, that I value you, your time and your attention. It's a privilege to have this time of yours where you could be giving your time to anything or anybody, but you're giving this time to the Nurah Speaks podcast. And so in respect of you, it is my intention to only bring folks before you, as I say in the opening, those who have demonstrated capacity in their fields. Nurah Speaks may be entertaining, but it is not necessarily my objective to entertain. I want to inform, I want to inspire, and I want to enlighten. And so the guests who will be coming to the podcast in 2021 will do just that. They will enlighten you, they will inform you, and they will certainly inspire you. In the year 2021, I'm thinking ahead to 2021, show topics that I'm looking forward to having, conversations that I'm looking forward to having. I'm also looking forward to continue refinement of this program. I can certainly reflect back to when I first started podcasting, and I can sort of measure out or assess how the show has improved. But, there's always room for improvement. And so I want to spend some time really looking in areas that I can improve this show, where I can bring you a product that's even better than it was in 2020. I also want to increase listener engagement. And, I get support and comments on social media, Instagram and Facebook, emails. I get conversations or compliments of people who I see in, my day-to-day interactions, who appreciate the program and who give me feedback. But I do want to create opportunities for listener engagement. I know some folks with their podcasts, they try to create a community around the show. And I think that's really cool, the way some people do that. For me, I'm not sure what that engagement would look like exactly. I don't want to, necessarily give the listener assignments, give the listener work to do. But I do want to hear more from the listeners and what the listeners want to hear about, or guests that the listeners want to hear from, or, show ideas from the listeners, and maybe even create opportunities for listeners to have their voices heard on the podcast. So I do want to explore ways to increase listener engagement. And then finally, something I'm looking forward to in 2021 is increasing the audience of the Nurah Speaks across the various platforms. And so there are so many streaming apps that you can listen to podcasts over. I mean, there's Apple Podcasts, there's Spotify, Stitcher, Radio Public, Castbox, Google Play, Amazon Music, Pandora. I mean, there's just so many. And I'm learning that there are many more. So, I want to make sure that Nurah Speaks is heard on every outlet possible so that this conversation can be accessible to everybody possible. Maybe folks aren't listening on Apple or Stitcher or Spotify. So I want to find out where folks are listening to podcasts and make sure that Nurah Speaks is on that platform. I want everybody to have an opportunity to hear the sort of conversations that's happening and hear the great guests that Nurah Speaks will be bringing in 2021. So, those are some of the things that I'm thinking about moving forward into the new year. The 13 guests minimum for 2021, developing the show topics, refining the show, improving the show, increasing listener engagement, and increasing audience across the platforms. And so this is what I'm thinking about looking ahead into 2021. But what about you? What goals or ideas do you have in mind for yourself? Have you even considered what the new year will bring or what you will bring into the new year? And so I would encourage you that if you have new goals, new inspiration, don't wait. Don't wait to act on it. Get busy. Start today preparing. It's a shame when we have such great ideas and they're just brimming right under the surface, but we take forever to get started because we have so much fear and because we have so much doubt and uncertainty. And so the best advice that I can give is get started. Just get started and be consistent. Whatever it is that you have in mind to do, whether it's new or whether it's getting back to something that you miss, get busy, get started, set a target date and commit to it. I know some folks feel like they have to know everything or learn everything or be proficient before they go live with their product or with their service. One thing I would encourage you, especially if you're interested in doing something like podcasting, and I encourage you, if you have something meaningful to say, if you feel like you have something to contribute, get started. The journey is its own training ground. On the journey, you're going to work out the kinks, you're going to grow, and in general, you're going to improve. But don't wait for perfection to get started, right? The saying, progress beats perfection any day. Get started and you will perfect your craft as you go. Some of us want to start out the gate and be perfect, but your day one is not going to look like your day 100. And if your day one does look like your day 100, then maybe something's wrong and you have not had the gains in those 99 days that you should have. So just get started. And while some of us are waiting for perfection, the next person has stumbled out of the block. They're uncertain, but they're curious. They're imperfect, but they're learning. And they're growing along the way. And so you can too grow along the way. And we have to overcome our fears, overcome our discomfort, and think about the greater good of that goal that we have. And let that be your guiding principle. Think about the good that you want to contribute to the world. And so I hope that this podcast has encouraged you. I hope that it has inspired you. I hope that you have found it meaningful. And if you have, I encourage you to share it with your family and with your friends. Even if it's specific episodes that you want to share with family and friends, specific topics that you've heard on the show that you would like to share. But I'm looking ahead to 2021, and I hope that you are too. And I hope that you are preparing yourself physically and mentally. 2020 was such a tough year. And if, we're here in December together. What a blessing. And I hope that we are coming into January together as well. And that'll also be a blessing. And so we have one more episode of Nurah Speaks in the year 2020 after this one. It will be released next week. However, I wanted to let you know that I will be taking some time off in January. Usually I take off in December and prepare for the new year. But this time I wanted to go all the way through in December and take some time off in January as we prepare and kick off the 2021 season of the Nurah Speaks podcast. But I'll tell you, I am excited about this program. I'm excited today as I was on my very first episode. And it doesn't seem like it was so long ago, but since this is episode 145, we have come such a long ways together. And we have so much further to go together. And I'm excited to have you on this journey with me as you've watched this show improve and grow. And I hope that you will also have opportunities to improve and grow, and we will be doing this together. So I look forward to being with you next week for another brand new episode of the podcast. But until next time, stay in peace. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nurah Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, NurahMuhammad.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@NurahSpeaks.com. You can also follow the Nurah Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nurah Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.